Welcome to Liberty.me Studio. Be part of the global Liberty community at Liberty.me. Liberty lives here.
Hey everybody, this is Tatiana Moroz and welcome to the Tatiana Show. Tonight we have a very special guest, my good friend and the founder of Liberty.me, where we're broadcasting from, Jeffrey Tucker. Jeffrey, thank you for joining me today.
Hey Tatiana, it's really fun to see you. Everything going well for you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
And I'm happy to have you back. You were on the inaugural episode of Tatiana Show, and it was a lot of fun. We talked not so much about serious stuff, but I think it was a really nice, smooth, kind of fun way to start off the show. So thank you for coming back again.
Oh, sure. Well, these are exciting times, so I'm glad to kind of reconnect with you on all the cool stuff that's going on right now.
I agree. So people may not know this, but I credit you as, I bought my first Bitcoins from Tony Galippi, and him and Steven were trying to convince me about Bitcoin, but I didn't really understand where I should care. But I credit you with giving me a reason to think about Bitcoin in a totally different way. So you really inspired me. And I always tell the story that when I first really got it, it was when I came to the cryptocurrency convention in Atlanta. And that was my foray into Bitcoin, where I finally realized how awesome it was.
Well,
so thank you.
Tatiana, that conference was October 5th, 2013.
That's right.
And I had discovered Bitcoin in something like, I had known about it for a couple of years, essentially. But it was, I think, January or February of that year that I had become an owner, which I think is really the thing that you have to do in order to really get it. Most of the people I know who don't understand it or don't are skeptics of it or whatever, typically it's because they don't own it, they don't use it. Once you own it and use it, everything changes. So I found myself a little bit frustrated because I fell in love with this technology, and come June or July, I had already written probably a dozen articles on the topic and been amazed at the number of sort of in a way, the ceiling had fallen in on me. Like so many of my old friends said, "Oh, you've fallen for a Ponzi scheme. This is a hoax. How can you push this thing?" And I was subjected to like Twitter war, insults. And there's one blogger out there, who like blogged, 40 blogs against me or whatever. And I was feeling weirdly embattled. Like I didn't understand, like, it was one thing to be a skeptic, but another thing to express such vituperative anger against a person because I was curious about the topic and excited about this innovation. So part of the reason I put together that conference, I was frustrated that there wasn't really a conference out there that was giving an in-depth intellectual exploration of Bitcoin. There was this industry conferences, but no real intellectual conferences. So I thought, well, look, you can't just, curse the darkness. You should do what you can to sort of fix the world. So I actually backed that conference, that cryptocurrency conference in Atlanta, just personally. I made up this thing called the cryptocurrency conference and just held it. And I think at the time when I decided to do it, I think Bitcoin was something like $30, right? So it was. But the conference was an enormous success, and I had all sorts of people I brought in to give talks on the essence of, on the theoretical and practical problems associated with Bitcoin. And I was real proud of that conference because it was one of the first conferences in the U.S. I think it might have been the first conference in the U.S. that wasn't a Bitcoin Foundation conference sponsored conference. Mm-hmm. And then it was after that point that the thing just went wild, right? So suddenly you went up and up and up and then down and then up, and it was just hysteria all around. And then I didn't hold it again, and the reason is that there's so many Bitcoin conferences that followed it, and I felt like I'd sort of done what I wanted to do, which was sort of engage serious economists and technicians and everything on this topic. But it's interesting to hear you say that that was the event that did it for you, because, Tatiana, there were, I think, I don't know, how many people do we have at that event? A couple of hundred or something like that, right? Which was a nice turnout, really. But so many people who came to that event said that that was what did it. That they didn't know anything about Bitcoin, and that was the conference that did it. It wasn't just about learning about Bitcoin. It was the hope that Bitcoin inspired, that we can improve the world through our own initiative, that libertarians have something to do in the world besides just completely bemoan our current plight and curse the government, that there was actual hope out there, and
that was exactly what I responded to, was that I had been going to all these different Liberty conferences, and it was after Ron Paul lost, and everybody was just depressed and sort of, they didn't really have a sense of purpose. And I didn't really understand a lot of the things that they were talking about at the conference, but what I did understand was that feeling of hope, because I had recognized it. And that's what was so intoxicating about the Ron Paul movement, was that feeling of, oh my gosh, we're going to save the world. We're going to do it all together now. And this was such a more realistic approach to doing it. And it was also in line with that libertarian spirit of creation and going around the system, not even needing the system's permission in order to do something. So it was really great from that perspective for me.
Well, and two, I mean, I have to tell you that it was a big professional risk for me, actually, a greater risk than I knew at the time, because I genuinely got curious about it. So what happened to me was, like, back in like 2000, I think 2011, I was the editor of a big economics website, and I started getting articles in about Bitcoin, and I had to read them and try to decide whether to run them. And I declined to do it because I couldn't understand the technology. One thing editors don't do is run articles they don't understand, right? So I had heard about it, but I thought it was just like crazy. You can't make money out of ones and zeros. It just seemed very obvious to me. This is what I didn't understand what was wrong with it, but I just figured there was something wrong with it. So when I changed my mind on that, I took a big professional risk. I mean, not as big a risk as those people who were mining Bitcoin in 2009 and 2010, that sort of thing. But still, I was really nervous in retrospect. I thought, my God, who knew that this thing would be so controversial? I really had no idea. I thought it was just kind of an interesting topic, but for a lot of people, it was like, okay, now we're going to find out whether or not Jeffrey Tucker is, throwing himself into a massive scam or is a serious person. I was like being judged, which is a weird feeling, because I never really set out to do that. The other thing that people got really confused about is that I was at the time working for a company, Laissez-Faire Books, and I still am, actually. I still do writing for them all the time. And in fact, I wrote something today for Laissez-Faire, but they're affiliated with Agora Financial, which gives a lot of financial advice. And people thought I was just like giving an investment recommendation. And I didn't decline to recommend that people buy Bitcoin, but neither was that my primary point. I was looking at Bitcoin as a monetary technology, not as something you should buy now and sell later or whatever. That wasn't the point. But there's just a lot of mixed messages and a lot of frenzy at the time. So I guess the reason I'm telling this history, Tatiana, not just because you brought it up, it's just that here we are now in the summer of 2015, and Bitcoin has weathered so many storms again and again and again. People had predicted the value was going to go to zero, that it was never going to go anywhere, that it couldn't be what it promised to be, that everybody's money would be stolen, that there was all a big scam, and so on and so on. But after everything, here we are in 2015, and this thing is now running, what, $277 or whatever it is, which is extraordinary in a way. I would be amazed enough if a Bitcoin cost $1, because if it's just $1, that's sort of proof that it's a proof of concept, really, essentially. But for it to be for a protocol, what is essentially a numeraire, a non-existent ledger. I mean, Bitcoins don't actually exist physically. I mean, you can print them out or something, but basically, the thing is completely digital. For that to become a kind of a global currency the way it is now, and a safe haven. And think about it, Tatiana. I mean, over the last 3 weeks, we've seen two great crises in the world. The second largest economy, or maybe the first largest economy in the world, China, is undergoing, massive stock market crash, a big correction in their capital markets. There's a real fear that, China's experiencing in 2008 right now. At the same time as the euro seems to be falling apart, with Greek leading the way on this bankruptcy and preparing essentially to leave the European Union, threatening the entire basis of European economic stability and all the rest of it. And it's not gold that is winning from this struggle. I mean, gold is actually lower today than it was 30 days ago. It's Bitcoin, and not just Bitcoin, but 8 different cryptocurrencies, including, of all things, Litecoin and Darkcoin, but also Dogecoin, right? So you could see the world has dramatically changed. I mean, 6,000 years in which gold was the safe haven against the monetary debauchery. Now its value is pretty clearly just entirely industrial and not monetary. And all the safe haven energy and the love of something other than, trust in governments is being absorbed by cryptocurrency. I mean, wow, I mean, I wrote an article today calling Bitcoin the little engine that could, or the little crypto that could, It's really like that, just a sneaky little tiny currency. We don't even know the name of the person who invented it. Put out on a free forum, went for 10 months with zero value, trashed and put upon by every big shot in the world, intellectual, investment advisors, central banks, senators, politicians, bureaucrats, trashed by every, top pundit in the world. Some of its leading progenitors, jailed and beaten. And still, here we go, where it's taking over the world.
Well, it's nice to be right. I had a lot of people that doubted Bitcoin, and I've had to suffer them telling me that I'm an idiot for quite a while and thinking that it's stupid, and having these different, somewhat frustrating conversations, which I was already used to trying to tell people about Ron Paul. Some people were really into it. Some people were pushing back. But now whenever I talk about Bitcoin, people, I think I mean, not to say that I toot my own horn, but I think people understand it when I explain it to them, and they're not as scared, and maybe because they're getting, more of it in their day-to-day life, so they're having time to process that information. But we're basically being proven right for having faith in cryptocurrency, maybe not Bitcoin. Maybe they'll end up being something else that will take the lead. But for now, Bitcoin is serving a very valuable purpose. It's really exciting.
Well, I mean, it's a delight for me. I know exactly what you mean, the sense of like, it's nice to be right every once in a while, right?
Absolutely.
I remember, I think it was maybe it's in the winter of 2013, I was on there's several thousand people were gathered at a big convention. I forget now where it was, Nashville or something like that, for the Certified Financial Planners Association of America or something like that. And I had been invited in to be the person who was on stage interviewing, of all people, one of the world's greatest investors, Jim Rogers, and they let me just ask him a series of questions. That was the show for the night. I was interviewing Jim Rogers, and I just couldn't resist it. I said, Jim, what's your opinion about the prospects for Bitcoin? And he exploded into a kind of like a rage, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, he was just like, basically, I mean, he didn't say this, but it was his attitude and his tone of his answer was like, how dare you ask me such an idiotic question? This thing is a joke. It's laughable. It doesn't even deserve to be discussed in polite company at all. You've ruined this entire night by this cranky, stupid thing that you brought up, and if you ever expect me to speak to you again, I'd like you to shut up now on that. I mean, that was basically his answer.
People get inspired with rage with Bitcoin. Like, they really like to hate it and say it's so stupid, and now they look like idiots. I love it.
I know, right? And I was embarrassed, right? I kind of like turned white, and I was like, oh, sorry, I ruined the night, by my dumb question, but that was his attitude. It was just like, look, I thought you were a serious guy, and this is a serious evening, and here you are, daring to utter the words Bitcoin. I mean, I don't know. It was like, I brought up the worst possible topic, I mean, and he made me pay a price for this publicly. I mean, it was, and then really afterwards, people were like, I just can't believe you even asked that question. That's really disgusting, So, that's right. I mean, so yeah. And I know exactly how you feel. I mean, it's like you sort of, what I would like to do is like send out a mass email or tweet or something to every one of my, many hundreds of detractors, for the whole year of 2013 and 2014 and say, don't you think it's time for a public apology?
Oh my gosh, I would love to see that.
I know, right? But it never
I like
happened.
that idea.
People don't apologize. They just kind of move on with their lives and pretend like it never happened,
Well, my brother and I, we're both Leos, and there's like a weird competitive thing from time to time.
Wait, did you say you're both Leos?
Yeah, we're both
Oh,
Leos.
that's like a star thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, right.
So, and Leos are very kind of center of attention type people. So there was a battle between me and my brother because he works in the banking industry and I'm, of course, an activist, musician, weirdo, also businesswoman.
Yeah.
But anyway, he totally made fun of Bitcoin when it came out and, ran his mouth about it. And I brought it up with him the other day, expecting some big vindication or he would grovel and I would laugh and point and then maybe graciously forgive him and let him get up off of his knees. But none of this happened. He was like, oh, well, whatever. And I was like, oh,
I know.
he really,
Yeah.
he robbed me of my moment.
I know exactly what you mean. I I don't know. I think people who debunk, look, it's not their fault. They don't understand. I mean, most, they're not owners. They don't understand. They've never bothered to investigate it. So I get that. It's okay. But still, it's just as embarrassing as if a person said, who needs internal combustion? My horses, plow my land just fine. I don't need electricity. There's nothing wrong with my whale oil lamps here, mankind doesn't need to fly. The ground is perfectly fine for us, and so on. I mean, there's always people who are denouncing the new technology and putting it down and saying we don't need it. I mean, look, I was one of those. I thought email was ridiculous. I didn't think I needed email. When it first came out, I thought, well, that's never going to go anywhere. So.
Yeah, that's how I felt about laptop computers. My father, he tried to buy me one. And I was so mad. I thought it was such a horrible present. I'd rather go to Mexico or something interesting. And instead he wanted to buy me a laptop. And I never even ended up getting it. We got into a huge fight.
So what was your rationale? It was like, well,
what do I need that for? Why can't I just go to the computer at the school? Why would I want to do that from home? That sounds so horrible. And now all I do is spend so much time on my laptop.
Isn't it so great? I think there's a lesson here, and it's something like we need to stay humble, right? We need to stay humble. We don't know everything. The second thing is we need to be willing to be surprised, by the latest turns. And, another thing is that that when you crowdsource the technology, the results can be different than what you initially rationalistically think. I mean, there's certain lessons for our attitude towards life we should take, and I think it's important for like libertarians. There's some libertarians out there that think that, well, everything's already sewn up. The government owns everything. There's no hope for the future. Whatever. That's ridiculous. I mean, you look at like the.
I feel that that way sometimes.
You kind of do, and Tatiana, I think the reason you do is that you invested too much hope in politics, whereas I was never on board with that whole political thing. I always knew it was going to be a long struggle. And so you and I have had this discussion before. I became cynical about politics a lot earlier than you did. So.
Yes, I was a hopeful, bounding puppy thinking that we were all going to win and the world would turn into roses and cheesecake. And here we are.
When it didn't happen, you were just like, floating alone and despairing and, whatever. Yeah.
Well, yeah, sometimes I feel a sense of despair for mankind because it can be overwhelming. But I think that I actually draw a lot of inspiration from you because you're always so cheery and you've been doing it longer than I have, and yet you always have a very positive attitude. So it's very uplifting, and it's a good thing for the community in general.
Well, I just hope is so important. I think it's also empirically justified. One of the really delightful things about history is that the people who wield power can make a lot of trouble. They can kill a lot of people. They can destroy a lot of prosperity. But in the end, people don't like to live in cages. They eventually die. They eventually go away. Their structures fall, and what persists are the really beautiful things in the world. Relationships, human relationships are formed organically. Technologies that are introduced into the world that never leave us. The division of labor, the global connections of prosperity and trade that last and last. We cannot last them. I mean, liberty is so strong and so powerful and so embedded deeply within the human personality and within our minds and our hearts, really, because I think liberty is ultimately based on love, and love cannot be extinguished. It just can't. Love is the great immutable force in the world. Thank God for it, right?
Absolutely. You know what I think of? It's an expression that somebody told me. I thought it was really good. Something like, in the war of the cat versus the mice will eventually win, but in the meantime, the cats will be well fed. So I think that that's what we're dealing with a little bit, and that can
Yeah.
be a little discouraging sometimes. But
I was thinking, speaking of cats, I mean, I'm sure there's probably not a day that goes by where you don't think about the sentencing of Ross, which is,
Mhm.
well, as far as I can tell, has been denounced by every respectable voice, from coast to coast. I mean, the sentencing of Ross Ulbricht was one of the great human rights outrages of my lifetime.
Absolutely.
And I guess one of the things that's so discouraging about that case is, as a person like me, I believe in justice. I believe in truth. And I believe that justice and truth will prevail. But this case just seems so grim, that one person could exercise such appalling a power over another person in this world. It seems so wrong. It seems like there ought to be some way that it could be reversed. And I'm not sure I see what that way is really, but we just still have to have hope and believe.
Well, that's kind of what my song set out to say, is to give people sort of a message of hope and of love. There were a lot of different ways that I could have approached writing a song about the Silk Road, and some people have said, oh, well, it's kind of a slow song. But it's a very devastating thing that happened. It's a very sad thing. It's not something that we should be cheering. But throughout the song, that is the message of love and hope. And there's even, certain lines specifically referencing kind of what you said. And I get very upset when things are unjust, and I took the sentencing very hard, of course, like most of us did. But I've been corresponding with Ross over letters, and one of the things that really strikes me about him is his unbelievable positive outlook on everything. I mean, he's in prison and he's eating healthy, he's working out, he's using his time in a positive way. He's helping GED students get their GED. He's teaching yoga. He's doing all these different things. And in his letter, he wrote me, he said, don't despair about what happened to me or anything that's happened with your voice or anything at all, because as long as we're alive, there is hope.
Hmm.
And to me, seeing, what happened to him, it's very difficult to see that ray of light. But if he, as the person to whom this is happening, can feel that way, then I think the rest of us can draw strength. And I think that there have been a lot of positive things that have come of it. For example, raising attention to the drug war, the prison population, and the prison industrial complex. What is the objective of the government when they say that they have a war on drugs? Because if the Silk Road made the drug industry safer, and they care about the people being safer, then they should look at it a little bit more seriously instead of being so dismissive. And it also showed just how ruthless the power structure is to squash dissent and entrepreneurship and anything outside of the system, because they just want a piece of the action, basically, as far as I can tell. They want to get money off of it. They want to keep everybody in control. And if you think about why people use drugs, um, they use drugs and alcohol and, compulsive working out, compulsive eating, all these things because they're responding as human beings to difficulty around them. And when people have something really painful happening to them or something that they're upset about, they try and escape that. So to say that you're going to have a war on drugs is ridiculous because people will always have something that they're sad about that they're going to want to escape. So it would be much more useful to teach people how to deal with their issues in a more productive way. Whereas what we're doing now is just, oh, you're a person with problems. Let's lock you up in jail, throw away the key, put you in with a lot of other drug addicts, and have you work for 10 cents an hour while we make a profit off of your labor. I mean, it's slavery. It's really, really revolting. And it's something that I've learned to pay more attention to, and I've gained a greater understanding for that. And I'm very grateful for that.
So, Tatiana, I mean, this is, I'm glad you brought this up because I think about you, as a musician and an artist, and a businesswoman and a person, called to something spectacular, somebody who's called to do something wonderful for humanity. I've always believed that about you. And and you look at the narrative of your life over the last, 5 years or something, and it all seems to be pointing to something that you have a special passion for, that you can do, that's especially beautiful, like a kind of a light that you can bring to the world, that without which will be, in darkness and unenlightened. And sometimes I think about this prison issue, and I see the passion you have for it, particularly with the Ross Ulbricht case, but all similar cases. And it makes me wonder. I think about your future, and I wonder if you're the person who within the Liberty space is going to be the one to bring a new consciousness about the prison population and about alternatives to prison, and that you could really make a difference in this world. Something tells me that it seems like everything is kind of pointing in this direction for you.
Well, I would agree with that. I've always felt a very strong sense of wanting to do something impactful and using my gift, not just to have everybody look at me and say, oh, you're a great singer or something. Like I see there being a purpose to it. And what I've been thinking about doing is, and I need to look into it because I only had this idea a couple weeks ago, but I want to play in prisons because even when I was little and I would watch people on TV and you see these horrible criminals, I always feel some sort of sense of what drove this person to that. Now, I know that there's psychopaths and there's sociopaths with no conscience. So we, put them aside. But I think a lot of people that end up doing quote unquote bad things, there's a reason why they got there. And if I can show them some compassion, even if nobody else knows about it, I feel like I've done a great service to mankind overall. And I think that that's very rewarding. And if I can parlay that experience, for example, if I can go and do my own Folsom Prison, just like Johnny Cash, then I think that that would be a really great narrative. And that would be a really great way to teach people about what's going on there. And I don't think I'm so threatening to people, so they might be willing to listen.
It's just a couple of comments about that. One is that as far as I can tell, the least influential figure in the history of humanity is Jesus, because
The least influential, that's an
yeah.
unusual statement.
Well, I say this only because apparently nobody pays, any attention to his teachings, at all. Because if you read his parables, you read his teachings and his ethics, a lot of miserable things would have been avoided, and a lot of suffering, a lot of hurt, and a lot of devastation would have been stopped in human history. But one of the things he talks about that people don't pay any attention to, again, is the special ministry that he had towards prisoners. He talked about prisoners all the time. That they apparently, because they need special love and attention and care, and the society tends to forget about people once they go into prison. They're like, well, they screwed up. They're a done deal. They're out of my hair. There's nothing we can do. They're in prison. And it's nonsense, because they're human beings like everybody else. It's just that they've had their souls and their humanity stolen from them by powerful people. So particularly, holy, pious, super moral, dedicated people should do whatever they can to pay special attention to the prison population. So that's one thing. The second thing I wanted to tell you is that, back when I used to conduct a lot of clinics around the country on Gregorian chant, because I'm pretty good at reading Gregorian chant and teaching it, and I have a special love for it, right? So
I've heard your love before. You played me an eclectic mix on our drive from San Diego to Malibu, and it was Gregorian chants were on the list.
Right. No, I know.
It's a real thing, guys.
Yeah, I'm pretty much a fanatic for this stuff. I love it because the one thing that's beautiful about chant is that it's lasted longer than any existing state in the world. So that always inspires me about it. But I was conducting a seminar one time, and a man came up to me and said, "Well, thanks for that beautiful seminar. It really helped me in my own teaching, because I conduct a Gregorian chant choir myself." And I said, "Oh, that's great. What parish? What cathedral? What university?" He said, "Oh, none of those. Actually, I conduct it at the conduct a Gregorian chant at the federal prison for the death row inmates there. I have a choir of 12 men that I teach every week, and we sing Gregorian chants." And I said, "And they're all on death row?" He said, "Oh yeah, they'll all die. But I go there every week and teach them Gregorian chant." And he said they're a marvelous choir. It's the best choir I ever conducted. And
I think it must be rewarding,
yeah.
but so sad. How could you sit there and look at people when you know that they're going to be punished that way, and get to know them as human beings and not just as bad guy,
Right. Yeah,
Gosh.
I don't know. I mean, I was so deeply touched by that because, I saw my Gregorian chant conducting as a kind of luxury in my life. It's just something fun I would do to go and help, monks and nuns, to sing better on Sundays or something, to chant the office in a more compelling way. And yet here was a man in front of me who took out one day a week to go to the prison and for an afternoon and teach everybody Gregorian chant. I just thought, that's just amazing. It's just amazing.
I think if you can have compassion for the most downtrodden in society, even if they are criminals, you have accomplished a great feat in terms of as a human being, period, and full stop.
Yeah, I think that's really true. It's hard to gain access though to jails. I went to I was in jail just for a brief period some years ago, and I was so
As a prisoner?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was arrested and taken.
Can you tell me why? I can't help myself. Maybe you don't want to tell me, but it sounds so juicy.
Well, it was a failure to appear situation.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's not as exciting. You should have said it was a bar fight or something better.
Yeah, I've been in bar fights. Weirdly, I do get in bar fights, like not all the time, but I do tend to fight in bars. I don't know why. Anyway, but that was not the reason I was arrested. I was arrested out of a Sunday brunch just for failure to appear to pay a traffic ticket, and it was hauled off to jail. And it was a traumatizing experience, because it's not just that because you don't know how long you're going to be there. Everybody who loves you is outside the prison. They don't even know where you are. You don't have access to the internet, your cell phone. Everything's taken away. The people who control your lives don't care anything about you. In this sense, it's worse than slavery because at least under slavery, the master of the plantation or the owner, has some investment in your work and your value as a worker in any case. But in jail, they don't. When the warden looks at you, it's weird. It's like they look through you. You're just a sort of a bag of flesh that does nothing but consume resources. I mean, they really don't care if you live or die. And to be surrounded by nobody who loves you and everybody who has no value for you whatsoever, Tatiana, it's a metaphysically transformative experience that you can't access unless you've actually been in prison. It makes you realize what it means for humanity to not be valued by others, and how much of our personality and our sense of ourselves is bound up with how much other people care for you. I mean, without that, our lives would be dramatically different. Our perceptions of ourselves would be radically transformed. I wasn't there very long, but in that period, I went through the greatest single trauma of my entire life. Like, I had to rethink myself because of this transformative institutional environment that robbed me of everything in the whole world that I personally valued. It's amazing. You can't ever be the same after an experience like that, really.
I mean, I have never been to jail as a prisoner or anything like that, but just from, writing to Ross and just hearing about the case and everything like that, it's had a very profound influence on me. Do you think if you, I mean, and in a much deeper way than you would even necessarily think as somebody hearing about a story. But I mean, once you get to know somebody's family and you understand how there are so many people affected, not just the prisoners, but their loved ones, and that kind of spreads out. Do you think that if you were in jail for a longer period of time, you would be able to maintain a positive attitude? I mean, I don't know how
I
people
don't
can
know,
manage that.
Tatiana. I don't want to be tested in that regard.
Of course. No, definitely not.
I don't know what I would turn out to be. You know, the whole time I was there, um, I stood. I mean, I didn't want to sit down. Like, why didn't I sit down? Why didn't I lie down? I just stood. And I think it was as I think back on it, I think it was just a fear that if I sat down, that would make it a more permanent situation. You know, it was ridiculous. I mean, just to stand frozen in one spot for endless hours, it was just made no sense whatsoever. But I think I just had this. I was frozen with fear that if I sat down and got comfortable, that it would somehow become my new reality. I wanted to be in denial of that reality because it was such. Look, and things drive you crazy while you're there, right? Like, okay, the whole myth of the phone call, for example. I mean, you can make a phone call. No, you can't make a phone call. First of all, you don't have a cell phone. You don't remember anybody's phone numbers, but the phone doesn't actually work, there. Anyway, I mean, maybe if you're there for a long time, you can have scheduled phone calls. I don't know. But another big thing is there's no clock on the wall. And you might think that's no big deal, but when you don't know if it's noon or 6 o'clock and there's no windows, or maybe it's midnight, I mean, you have no clue. So time disappears. Everybody who values you is kept away from you. The only people who have any control over you, you have no control over your life. The only people who do control your life have no regard for you whatsoever, whether you lived or died. If you dropped out of a heart attack right there, they would just drag you out and toss you over to the mortuary. That whole reality, the absence of time, the absence of contact, the absence of the utter and complete absence of love is amazing. And what you resort to ultimately is you're desperate for some kind of relationships with your fellow inmates, essentially. And it's amazing how much value you can quickly find in other people. No matter what race, what class, how bad they are, you suddenly begin to see your fellow inmates as like of infinite value as human beings. That's an amazing thing. That's an amazing thing to happen to you because other people become your lifeline, your connection to a reality that you're barely able to hang on to at all.
It's very barbaric what goes on in this country. And, I think that it's really important for people to remember and to check themselves and to not just say, all these people deserve garbage. That mentality is not right. What do they say, that society is judged on how it treats its least fortunate, and I guess in this case, it's criminals as well. And I think that that's really true. And what happens in the United States is very disappointing. Have you heard about Obama giving out these pardons?
I saw that. By the way, just to back up a second, no, you're exactly
Sure.
right. I mean, we all value our pets more than we value our prisoners in this country.
Yes.
I mean, it's amazing how much we fuss over our pets and forget our prisoners. But yeah, I did see this from Obama, and it actually gave me hope. And as much as I object to so many things about Obama, um, I read things like that, and maybe it's a hoax, maybe it's not going to happen, but it did give me some hope that maybe at the highest levels there's some change of mind that's taking place,
I had a few people saying, give credit where credit is due. Whereas to me, I felt that this act is a PR stunt to make up for an embarrassing presidency. And I don't think, it's like he's and his policies and the government down, right, are the reason why people are going to jail. So to thank them for letting out a couple little stragglers when all those people are there in the first place seems really kind of gross to me, because those people wouldn't be there if there weren't these laws in place and these mandatory sentences and things that just don't make sense. So I think it's more of a PR stunt. I mean, I'm very happy for the very few people that will be released, and I hope that that increases. I hope that I'm wrong, but it just feels very disingenuous, because that would be like if Hitler spared a couple people and then everybody wrote a million articles about how great he was because he spared a few people. Well, what about all the other people that he had killed? And that's where I get a little bit more pessimistic in my outlook on it. And because it also leads to a false sense of security with people saying that, oh, look, there's justice. And that's another thing that I've learned from the Ross case and from my experiences. There are a lot of things in our society that people believe are real. For example, if you have a contract, that you can do anything about it. If you have a contract and someone breaks it, it's miserable trying to get your money back. If you have a jury, oh, they're going to find you guilty or not guilty, and you're going to have a fair trial. Total nonsense. All of these, you call the police if something's wrong. If you've ever tried to call the police when something is wrong, 9 times out of 10, they can't help you with anything. So people have these beliefs that there are these social nets and these ways of keeping things on the up and up, and all of it is complete sham. And it's a rude awakening when that happens.
We all walk around with the sense that, I mean, not all of us, right? But most of us have a Hobbesian sense that the state is keeping the world together. And it's only once you try to use the state to your advantage to actually do what the state's supposed to do that you encounter the hoax and the fraud, really.
Yeah.
Obama was, I don't know if you saw this, there was an interview with a guy who made the Wire. I don't know if you ever saw that show, The Wire. It's made a show about...
No, I've heard it's very good. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, it's very good. So Obama interviewed the maker of it. I forget his name now.
Obama?
Yeah.
Interviewed the maker of the TV show?
Yeah, I know.
Obama the president?
I know, it sounds totally weird, and I don't...
Yeah, totally weird.
I mean, when I first heard about this, I thought, I got to see this, but you can Google it, and it comes right up. But so, yeah, Obama's got this guy in a studio, and Obama's like, I don't understand it. He's like the president, I think, and he's acting like he's some sort of talk show host. And yeah, and he's interviewing...
He could be the new Oprah.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like that, right? I mean, the whole show is, I know, it's like weird. I know. It's just, it's very bizarre. So he's interviewing the guy and going, so, what do you think we should do about, the drug war doesn't seem to be working like we want, right? Like, what should we do? And so the guy's like talking to him and going, well, we need to consider decriminalization and this prison population thing, it doesn't work. And Obama's going, yeah, you put them in there and, the rights are violated and they come out worse than they were and the recidivism's extremely high and clearly the system's not working. And the guy's like, yeah. And so they're having this talk. And, Obama says at the end, he goes, well, thank you for all you did with it by making The Wire, because, to the extent that it helps enlighten us, maybe in our times, in our generation, we can say, maybe we learned a little bit something from our mistakes. And that's the way the show ends, right? So you'd never know from watching this show that Obama is like the president. He's the guy who's like behind these policies. He's the one who's enforced it. He spent, his whole presidency, making the problem worse. The boy on the show, you'd think he was just some sort of humanitarian social reformer, struggling his way towards finding ever more compassionate ways of dealing with people. True story, Tatiana. True story.
I don't believe that he is any of those things, though. I think that I would like to believe that maybe he is a flawed person, but I think that my compassion stops with somebody who puts in policies like I can kill anybody I want and not
Oh,
give
I
them a
know the
trial.
level of hypocrisy. I don't even know what to make of it really. I think that there's something about the presidency that imparts to people like this a kind of a godlike immunity from responsibility. So I think in a way he believes that he can do all that that there's nobody in the world powerful enough to kind of like hold him accountable for the contradictions, you know? So this is just like, yeah, it's a masquerade in a sense, you know? And I'm not sure that he's cynical. I think it's that it's like people that powerful have multiple psychological maladies, essentially, you know, multiple personality disorders and all sorts of strange ways of thinking about the world. So he thinks he can reform prisons by interviewing some guy, you know, and making the right noises to please his friends. You know, I don't know. It's extremely creepy though, at some level.
Well, that office is often occupied by, my impression is that the presidency is generally filled with sociopaths and people that do not have a conscience. Um, I was watching a documentary the other day, and it was, the truth behind the Clintons, and it looked really scary and weird, and I don't even know why I clicked on it, but I watched it, and immediately, as soon as you start watching it, you realize, wait a second, the people that they're interviewing are not faking. They're real normal people. And there was an overwhelming amount of evidence that the Clinton family was engaged in cocaine trafficking, that he was womanizing like crazy. He would sleep with women, then he'd offer them a job or tell them that he was going to kill them. I mean, there were dead bodies all along the path. And really, I mean, very, very compelling evidence, and yet he became president. This was made when he was president and pre-Monica Lewinsky. So somehow he got away with it up until that point, and then people still are saying Hillary. I mean, she's a war criminal. So it's such a weird, convoluted bag of tricks and manipulated emotions, false nationalism, and lies, blackmail. I mean, it's a very dirty, dirty institution.
Well, yeah, and you raised a very interesting point about the possibility that a higher office like that is sort of paved with blood. Um, 'Cause we know very little about this actually, but I just can't in my own mind rule it out. I think there's a very big market for assassination within political circles, and I don't know what that looks like in practice. I'm not into conspiracy theory, but I think you generally make to expect the worst from these people is usually not a mistake. But you know what? One thing that's really interesting to me about the current political moments, and I'm not really interested in politics as such, but I am encouraged about the influence of Rand Paul, Senator the Senator, in actually drawing attention to the police state, surveillance state, and the problem of the prison population. And the first Republican in my lifetime that's made noises to this effect. In fact, he's been criticized by the hard right, in article after article. They're comparing him to Hillary Clinton because of his attitudes towards race and prison and this sort of thing. Like he's being denounced as a leftist by the extreme right.
Which is nonsense, because Hillary is basically pure evil, left or not left. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
she's not, such a sweetheart that everybody thinks that she's the old softie and Rand's a big jerk or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's pretty awful. Um, she has a trail of blood behind her too.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking back to the prison thing, something that I read a few weeks ago was that John Legend, who's a famous singer-songwriter, really super famous, and he has basically tried to take up the mantle of helping the prison population. And one of the people that he recommended was to check out Rand Paul. And he's an African American gentleman, and he's in entertainment. So the assumption is that he's going to say Obama's so great, blah, blah, blah. Now, I don't know how he feels about Obama, but for him to suggest that people go and check out Rand Paul, I thought that that was really just, it gave me a lot of hope. And I think that it was really cool to see a musical artist actually standing up for something of value, which was always what inspired me to do music. That's why I wanted to do music, because you could change the world. You can raise attention to important issues. Artists can speak the truth where others cannot. And I'm happy that he's using his voice in that way.
That's really exciting. That's really tremendous. I'm pleased to hear that, and I hope you'll add your voice to this. And when's your next album coming out, by the way?
My next album is actually quite an exciting topic in my mind. It's all mixed. Now I just have to master it. And we have Tatiana Coin, which is the way that I funded my album. And, we created it a year ago. I did it with Adam from Let's Talk Bitcoin. And Adam basically helped me from the very beginning. We created it together. We made it on Counterparty, but it was very difficult to use it. So now Adam has a company called Tokenly, where it basically built me a little machine for my website. So you could go onto my website. You could buy Tatiana Coin with Bitcoin, with XCP. So I'm tying all of those activities of using the musical experience to educate people about crypto. And I'm trying to wrap the marketing around that. So it's not just another artist putting out another album. I have some label interests and I have some different things I'm going to experiment with, but I really look at it as a platform to talk about cryptocurrency. And then, on the album, I have the only song that I've released so far is the Silk Road song. And so it allows me to talk about crypto. It allows me to talk about Ross. It allows me to talk about, there's a song called Call You Out, where I'm talking about how the courts are ineffective and so are the police. So what do? We have to, turn to each other, which is an underlying message of the connection that people can have with peer-to-peer. So I think that there's a lot of cool teaching moments, and I'm really excited. I did a song for you, the Skyline Pigeon cover, so that's going to be really good.
Did you know that I sang that a cappella at Porkfest?
Oh, how lovely.
I was up in the microphone about 5 minutes earlier than I needed to be to give my speech. So I just started, turn me loose from your hand, let me fly to distant lands. And I just love, I love the song so much. It's always the first song that occurs to me when I'm in front of a microphone.
That's funny. If I had been there, I could have accompanied you. I could have sang a duet with you or something. I know harmonies just like that, so it would be fun.
Yeah. Well, you and I have had a lot of gigs together, actually. If you think about it, we had that wonderful wedding, the blockchain wedding. We did
I
together.
forgot about that. Yeah, I was the first blockchain wedding singer,
I know.
and you were the first, officiator over the blockchain.
All this is true. Yeah, that was a great moment. That was so much fun. When am I going to see you again? Are you going to come to the LA Bitcoin conference? No. Are you going to be at Freedom Fest? No.
Wait, what's the LA Bitcoin conference?
And there's a conference on distributed ledger technology that I've been invited to. I don't know, sometime in September, something like that.
I don't know about that one. I haven't been invited to that. I'm trying to keep my travel somewhat minimized. I'm going to Chicago and Inside Bitcoins. Then I'm going to go for a wedding to DC in August. And then I'm going to the country of Georgia for Alt Convention, which actually that will be really interesting because tell me what you think about this. Generally, I am very wary of the government getting involved in anything, but the country of Georgia is part of the old Soviet Union, and it's in an area where there's a lot of developers, but there's also a lot of turmoil. And what the country has decided is that they want to make themselves a Bitcoin haven. So the Alt Convention is going to have government officials there, hopefully being advised by the Bitcoin community saying, okay, well, if you want to draw Bitcoin business in here, then these are the regulations that you should be taking into place, which hopefully are as minimal as possible, and actually hearing out the community. The Prime Minister is supposed to speak. So I think that that's pretty interesting. What do you think? Do you find an element of mistrust when you allow the government into Bitcoin, or do you think it's inevitable? What do you think about that?
Oh, I think it's a good thing. And there's a number of issues here. I'm not interested in Bitcoin being used as a kind of an active tool of waging some sort of political war. I actually think that Bitcoin is a technology. I think it's a superior technology. It's superior because it was invented out of private markets, and the energy and action of Bitcoin is emergent and flows out of human choices rather than government coercion. I think if government officials are interested in it, as long as there's no active measures to kind of suppress it, which I don't think there are in many places. I don't believe that. I think there's attempts to regulate it, which I don't like. But I don't think that's anything to regret at all. The other thing is that in order for a Bitcoin infrastructure to really arise in any country, the government exists. It's not going away tomorrow. Many investors and creators and entrepreneurs need some assurance that the rule of law is at the very least not going to be actively hostile. So to the extent that you can get central bankers, government officials, treasury officials, whatever, interested in what blockchain technology can do, I just don't see that as a bad thing.
I agree. Two things that I wanted to mention. So I think that, obviously, actually, I'll bring up Perry Ann said, Perry Ann Boring, she's at the Chamber of Digital Commerce, something like that. And her job is to go to the regulators and give them suggestions and take back the message of the community. And I interviewed her and I said, well, what do you think about that? She's like, well, they're going to make these regulations no matter what. So we need to make sure that we're at least part of the conversation, which I thought was very important.
I think that's that, as you stated, is indisputably true.
Yes, absolutely. And, that's where I reconcile my anarchist side and my practical side.
Sure.
And then on the other side is also in Georgia. It's a country that there's so much going on in that region that can be somewhat unstable. What better way to help an area like that than by bringing in technology and by offering people jobs and giving people, a reason to get up in the morning, some sort of purpose. And as their wealth grows, they can help the surrounding region and sort of show by example. And I think that, or lead by example, I think that that's something that is also extremely valuable and very inspiring. So I'm very excited to be a part of it. I wish you could come with me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure going to be amazing, especially if they let you sing. Will you be singing?
Yes, I should. My allergies, I'm on a bunch of allergy shots endlessly, but I should be able to be in much better shape by October for sure.
Well, I mean, if they hadn't gotten rid of DDT, you wouldn't have any allergies at all. I highly recommend it.
I'll give it a shot.
Tease me. No, you sound better than ever. Your voice is more wonderful than ever. I know you've had a lot of vocal troubles, and it's caused you a lot of headaches and doubts, over the last year and a half or something like that. But I don't know. I think your voice is beautiful, and you're getting ever more creative. And I think more importantly than that, I think you're really finding your voice in a moral sense. I'm excited about what you're going to be doing in the future.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I started the other day. I was actually able to sing on the 4th of July, and I started writing a song about, I woke up on the birthday of America, and I wondered what it meant to be free. And then it kind of goes on from there. And I was pretty excited to be doing something like that because the message of the song is going to be that this isn't an American holiday. This is a holiday celebrating an idea that is relatable to people all around the world. Freedom isn't just for the USA. It's for everybody. And I think that will be a really cool thing to drive home with the song.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to wrap up because it's 10 o'clock. We've had an amazing chat. I'm really appreciative that you were able to come. I want you to help me with something because Let's Talk Bitcoin also carries the Tatiana Show, the podcast version. People can tune in to liberty.me to get, the video content, but they can also listen to the podcast on LTV. And they have a secret word for the listeners. So what secret word should we have this time?
Is it just one word?
It could be a phrase if you'd like.
Okay. Pigeon is hard to spell, so I don't know. Maybe it should be, I was thinking Skyline Pigeon, but that's a little tough, isn't it? Is that too?
Listen, they've got the Google. They can look it up. Skyline Pigeon it is. I like that, actually. I think that's a good one.
Okay.
I also would like to encourage everybody to come to liberty.me. I've been a member for a while now, and I really love what you guys are doing over there. You have a wonderful team, and I get all these emails, not too many, thankfully. I actually noticed this morning, I was like, I get a lot of emails from liberty.me, but they're never annoying, and I don't know why.
No, it's because yeah, I know. It's wonderful. Well, I mean, Liberty, the more time that goes on, the more I realize just how important a platform it is to be able to publish without gatekeepers is, just the greatest thing ever. I mean, for writers, for readers, to be able to make friends, to participate in discussions and have, 200 book downloads, flawless books. It's really an exciting platform. There's nothing else like it in the world. I think it's made a very valuable contribution, and I'm very optimistic about the platform's future. So if you're not a member, you can join up. It ends up being $5 a month after, I don't know, you get a month free. If you don't like it, unsubscribe. I'm sure you will. You will like it and you'll stay because it's like worth way more than that. I mean, as a publishing platform, as you know, it's enormously beautiful. And I'm thrilled to have played a part in making it happen.
Yes. Well, you guys are always adding new stuff, and the writing is really great, and it's a nice place. Also, for people who came into Bitcoin and then don't necessarily know about Liberty, that was one of my challenges as a libertarian singer-songwriter, was that if I had to tell people I was libertarian, they'd freak out and run away and, say, I love Republicans or Democrats or some nonsense. But with Bitcoin, you can really open up a lot of these topics, and you don't necessarily have to put yourself into a box of a certain political identification. And here you can learn about it in a non-intimidating environment. And you guys have a lot of really great guests on and different lectures and stuff. So I appreciate you making me a part of that community.
It's a very friendly community, and it's a troll-free community. I mean, it's a place you can go for actual friendship, without being worried about being, like Twitter and Facebook. I mean, it can make you just as, it can actually ruin your life and ruin your day. I mean, it's a lot of times great, a lot of times terrible, but Liberty Me, as far as I can tell, it's always a 100% positive experience for everybody.
So where can people find out more of your writings and just any kind of upcoming shows or anything that you want to talk about before we sign off?
Sure. Well, as you know, I write constantly for Laissez-Faire Books. I'm the director of digital development for Fee.org. I have a new piece on Fee that just went up today called "The Little Crypto That Could," and it's about the exciting rise in Bitcoin's value over the last several weeks. I'm blogging there, every day. I have pieces coming out constantly, and then of course I'm always available for chat or messaging or anything else at liberty.me. So thank you for asking.
Absolutely. So thanks very much for having me. Everybody, we will be back next week. I don't know who my guest is, but I know it's going to be fun. If you need any marketing or PR for Bitcoin, I'm your gal. CryptoMediaHub.com. That's my business. And if you want to hear more about my music and check out Tatiana Coin, pretty soon I'll be rolling out more information, but you can go to my website, TatianaMorose.com. Everybody at LTB, thank you so much for listening. Everybody at Liberty.me, thanks very much for tuning in. And I'll see you next week, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday nights.
Thanks, Tatiana. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Liberty.me Studio. The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Liberty.me. Join the global Liberty community today at Liberty.me. Liberty lives here.